Admiral Bolter stood on the observation deck, his gaze fixed on the enormous holographic display unfolding before him. The room was silent, save for the low murmurs of his crew, a seasoned group of officers who had seen their fair share of battles. On the screen, star maps shifted, revealing a new signal, one that sent a wave of unease through the Megan fleet. It was massive, the size of a small moon, and the ship that came with it was far beyond what they'd expected. The United Earth ship Titan loomed large. Bolter had anticipated something more manageable, perhaps a scout vessel or a Class II warship, something in line with the human technology they had studied. But what appeared was something else entirely. "Why now?" Captain Rohr muttered, his voice thick with tension. "We were warned about this ship, but I thought it was just a myth." "It's no myth," Voller replied, drumming his fingers on the table, his expression grim. "This is no ordinary ship. This one was designed for war." The hologram zoomed in, revealing a towering vessel covered in thick armor plating, its engines crackling with violent electrical energy. Bolter's mind raced. He'd witnessed countless warships in his time, but this was unlike anything the Megan had ever encountered. It wasn't just advanced technology, it was monstrous. "Are we sure this is human?" Lieutenant Marr asked, stepping forward, his face tense. The crew had only heard fragmented reports. Humans were unpredictable, known for their aggressive nature and their endless cycles of war, what the Megan called the human paradox. But this was something else entirely. "Confirmed," Bolter said, his voice tight. "And it's not coming alone." The room fell into a heavy silence. The crew exchanged uncertain glances, their concern palpable. This ship wasn't just a war machine, it was a statement. "I don't like it," Rohr finally said, shaking his head. "We've encountered the Terrans before. They've never acted with such audacity." Bolter agreed. "This ship is different. Too pristine. Too powerful." "What's our move, Admiral?" Vorn asked, his voice laced with tension. Bolter stared at the hologram for a long, hard moment before speaking. "We observe for now, and hope it isn't as bad as I fear." Meanwhile, aboard the Titan, the crew was far from concerned. The ship hummed steadily, its immense power vibrating through every deck, but the crew's minds were on other matters, namely lunch. "Chili dogs?" Holden asked, glancing up from his pad, his fingers tapping absent-mindedly. "Chili dogs are fine," Sergeant Michael replied, eyes on the screen, "but only if they come with extra jalapenos." "You're crazy," Private Daniels chimed in from the back, turning around in his chair. "Those will burn your face off." Holden smirked, enjoying the back and forth, but the chatter abruptly halted as the ship's warning alarms screamed to life. Red lights flashed, cutting through the casual atmosphere. A harsh voice echoed over the intercom. "Warning, unknown ship detected. Weapon systems are now active. Prepare for engagement." The mess hall fell completely silent. "Here we go again," Holden muttered, his playful demeanor instantly vanishing. Sergeant Michael nodded, his expression hardening. "It's not the first time something big's been on our tail. They're just scared." "They always are," Daniel said, trying to brush off the tension, but Holden wasn't convinced. He quickly accessed the external sensors, his brow furrowing as unfamiliar readings flooded the screen. "Big?" Daniels asked, raising an eyebrow. "Big enough to get noticed," Holden replied, tapping the console. "Someone's watching us. And if I had to bet, someone's about to get really uncomfortable." Before anyone could respond, Captain Calloway's voice crackled through the comms. "Holden, report." Holden's fingers flew across the controls, pulling up images of the approaching vessel. "We've got an alien ship following us. It's massive, probably a flagship, maybe a fleet admiral's ship." There was a pause, then Calloway's voice came back, dry as ever. "Guess we're making a name for ourselves. All right, team, I want all weapons charged and ready. But don't fire unless they do." Meanwhile, aboard the Megan ship, Bolter's concern deepened. His sensors were unable to pierce the Titan's hull, and the data they were receiving was distorted by interference. He stared at the hologram, watching the Titan draw steadily closer. "Admiral, we need to decide," Raller pressed. Bolter paused, his mind racing with calculations and scenarios. The Titan was clearly a threat, but there was something unpredictable about the humans. "They're not like us," Bolter muttered under his breath. "Erratic, reckless." Suddenly, a loud bang echoed through the ship's hull, snapping him from his thoughts. Back on the Titan, Holden was the first to react. He grabbed the mic, his voice sharp and commanding. "This is the United Earth ship Titan. We do not have hostile intent. I repeat, no hostile intent." There was a tense silence before a deep, crackling voice came through the comms, distorted by static. "Human, you are a threat." Holden smirked, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Yeah, we hear that all the time. We've got their attention," Lieutenant Holden said, shaking his head with a grin. "And it's definitely not the friendly kind." On the Titan S bridge, everyone was tense but still measured. The warning lights shifted from yellow to red, red, indicating they had a target locked. It was clear now, an alien fleet broadcasting aggressive signals. "Do we engage?" Sergeant Michael asked, his fingers hovering over the weapon's controls. "No," Holden said, shaking his head. "I'm pretty sure they want to engage us. Let's not make things worse by acting like we're a target. I'll try to get us a clearer transmission." He tapped a few keys on his console, struggling to clean up the static. The alien voice crackled through again, but now they could make out some clearer words. "Monstrous weapon systems. Prepare for doom." Holden smirked, raising an eyebrow. "Well, that's nice, but I'm gonna need a little more. A clear threat would be great. Should we fire?" Private Daniels asked, his eyes darting to the weapons console. Holden thought for a moment. "Not yet. Let's see what they do." The alien voice came through once more urgent now, and filled with fury. "You dare defy the might of the Megan fleet? Prepare to meet your end." At that, Sergeant Michael couldn't help but let out a laugh. "Guess they're not too happy. Is that supposed to be a threat?" Daniels scoffed, raising an eyebrow. "Dude sounds like he's fighting a cold." Holden didn't take his eyes off the console. "That's not the issue," he muttered, still scanning the data. "We've got bigger problems than his sinuses. We need to figure out exactly what this fleet can do." On the Megan ship, Bolter was growing impatient. The alien warship's transmission was loud and clear, but it didn't provide the answers he needed. Every move made only deepened his suspicions. The Titan's energy signature was erratic, unpredictable. He had never seen anything like it before. "Shall we engage, Admiral?" Captain Rohr asked again, his voice growing tense. Bolter's mind was racing, torn by the weight of the decision. If they attacked and failed, it could be the end of the Megan fleet. If they hesitated, humanity might turn the Titan into a devastating weapon. "Not yet," Bolter finally replied, his voice steady. "We need to know more. These humans, they act without thinking. I need to see what kind of chaos they'll bring." Back aboard the Titan, Holden wasn't taking any chances. He wasn't eager to be the first to start a war, but it seemed like the aliens had already made up their minds. "Hey, Mikhail, give me a status on the weapon systems," Holden ordered. "Everything's hot and ready, sir," Michael answered, tweaking a few controls. "Plasma cannons, railguns, the whole arsenal. You want to aim something?" Holden stared at the massive alien ship hovering in front of them, still motionless. "Not yet. Let's see if they back off first. I think they're just trying to bluff us." Private Daniels stood nearby, his hand twitching toward his rifle. "I don't know, sir. Something doesn't feel right. They're not backing down." "Yeah, well, neither are we," Holden said, a grin spreading across his face. "Let them think we're scared. It's all part of the game." Suddenly, a crackling voice broke through the comms again, this time with an edge of desperation. "You are so dead, humans. The Megan fleet doesn't back down. You will know what fear is when we destroy you." Michael laughed loudly, almost too loudly for the tense moment. "Is that their idea of a threat? Man, they sound like they're still in kindergarten talking about fear." Holden chuckled, but his amusement was short-lived. The voice on the comms returned, colder and more threatening this time. "You are a threat," Bolter snapped. "You are not the only ones capable of violence. We will show you what true power means. Prepare to meet the end of the Megan fleet." Holden's grin faded instantly. This wasn't just a bluff anymore. Bolter meant business. The tension in the air was palpable. "All right, people," Holden muttered under his breath, his face hardening. "Looks like the party's over." He slammed his fist onto the control panel, raising the shields just in time. The Titan's plasma shields flared to life with an eerie blue glow, just as the Megan fleet unleashed a warning shot, an enormous beam of red energy streaking toward them. Holden cursed under his breath. "Here it comes." Back on the Megan ship, Bolter's grip tightened on the console. His fleet had just fired a warning shot, and the tension was about to erupt. It wasn't a full strike yet, but Bolter could feel the storm brewing. The human warship was formidable, and if it was willing to fight back, it needed to be neutralized before it could become a serious threat. "We're going in," Bolter ordered, his voice resolute. "Give me everything. All firepower now." The Megan fleet's cannons hummed to life, releasing massive energy blasts into the dark expanse of space. The barrage surged toward the Titan, aimed with deadly precision. Back on the Titan, the first hit came. Michael glanced at the console, unfazed. "That wasn't so bad," he muttered, fingers dancing over the controls. "How about we show them what we've got?" Holden's hand shot up, signaling for restraint. "We're not engaging first. We wait and see what happens." The alien ship was gearing up for another shot, this one bigger and far more deadly. Holden could feel feel the tension tightening the air like a wire ready to snap. "Let's make this quick," Michael muttered, his fingers moving over the control panel as the Titan's cannons roared to life. A massive blast shot forward, meeting the incoming energy beam just in time. The collision sent shockwaves rippling through the void, the resulting explosion momentarily lighting up the darkness of space. The Titan held its ground, but just barely. Bolter stared at the holographic display in disbelief. The humans had absorbed and redirected the energy like it was nothing. "This ship, it's too dangerous," Bolter muttered under his breath, his mind racing. Back aboard the Titan, Holden felt his pulse quicken as the enemy fleet advanced. The aliens weren't backing down, and neither were the humans. He had no idea how long they could hold out, but one thing was certain: this was only the beginning. "We're not going down that easy," Holden muttered, more to himself than anyone else. "Hold tight, boys. It's going to be one hell of a ride." Another wave of energy slammed into the Titan's shields. The ship groaned under the force, shaking violently, but it wasn't the first time. The real question wasn't how much damage was done. It was how quickly the Titan absorbed it. Even under the constant barrage, the warship remained tall and defiant. "Come on, let's see what you've got," Michael shouted, tapping a series of commands to charge up the Titan's railguns. "Not yet," Holden replied, his eyes locked on the console. "We wait until they make the first real move. We're not starting this war. Let them light the match." Despite Holden's words, the ship's shields flared as another volley of energy blasts battered the Titan. Alarms rang in the background, but Holden didn't flinch. His fingers flew across the panel, locking onto the incoming threat. The Megan fleet was no longer firing warning shots. The next strikes were going to be full force, designed to obliterate the Titan. Holden could feel the tension mounting, the aggression from the enemy fleet building toward an inevitable conclusion. It was only a matter of time before they crossed the line. "Sir, they're locking onto our engines," Daniels shouted from his station. "Brace for impact," Holden shouted. The crew gripped their stations as the ship lurched forward, but the incoming blast missed its intended target. At the last possible moment, Holden had rerouted power, shifting the shields to deflect the incoming blast away from the ship's core. The shockwave still rocked the Titan, sending the crew stumbling, but the ship remained resolute. "Good work, Holden," Michael said, his voice laced with approval. Holden didn't share in the praise. He knew what would come next. Bolter's fleet would hit with everything they had. The real fight was just beginning. "Ready the torpedoes," Holden commanded, his tone unwavering. "Get the railguns prepped. When I give the order, we strike. I want full blast, Michael. We're done playing nice. The time for diplomacy is over. The Megan have shown us their hand, and now it's time for them to feel human firepower." He wasn't going to back down. Not now. Not ever. Meanwhile, aboard the Megan ship, Bolter stood rigid before the massive holographic display, his fist clenched in frustration. His crew was growing more anxious by the second. Their warning shots had done nothing to breach the Titan's shields. The human ship was battered but still defiant, as though mocking the might of the Megan fleet. "Admiral, this isn't working. We need to commit," Ralthor urged. "We can't let them keep playing this game." Bolter's eyes narrowed, his pulse quickened. This wasn't supposed to be this difficult. Humans weren't supposed to be this strong. His mind raced with possibilities. If he attacked now, the Titan might retaliate with full force. He could destroy it, but at what cost? "We hit them with everything," Bolter growled, voice tight with fury. "No more games." A tense silence fell over the bridge as his crew followed his command. Bolter's fingers hovered over the firing controls, preparing to unleash the full wrath of the Megan fleet. But just as he was about to give the order, a new transmission cut through the static, clear and unwavering. "This is Admiral Holden of the United Earth ship Titan. We don't want to fight you, but if you don't stand down, we'll give you a reason to regret it." The words echoed in the Megan bridge, sending a ripple of disbelief through the crew. For a moment, the room was silent, as if everyone was absorbing the sheer audacity of the human's threat. "Admiral Bolter, I'm giving you one last chance to back off," Holden's voice continued, calm but carrying an underlying threat. "If you want to test whether we're bluffing, then fine. But I promise you this. You will regret it." Bolter's eyes flickered with disbelief, his grip tightening on the console. The humans were threatening a fleet twice their size, armed with enough firepower to wipe them out. "You think we'll regret this?" Bolter snarled. "You have no idea who you're messing with human. We've fought wars across the stars. You are nothing. Holden's voice remained steady, unaffected. I've heard that before. Let's see if you're any different. Shields up, Holden shouted, his voice cutting through the tension. The ship lurched again as the air thickened with anticipation. The Megan fleet had finally committed. Their weapons were locked on the Titan, preparing to unleash a barrage. Michael, you ready to return fire? Holden asked, his gaze fixed on the controls. Michael's fingers danced over the console. Ready to go, sir. Give them everything we've got, Holden ordered. With a deafening roar, the Titan-S railguns fired first. The massive rounds streaked through the emptiness of space, closing in on the Megan fleet at blistering speed, an overwhelming response to the threat. The Titan-S railgun rounds collided with the Megan fleet's shields, sending a massive explosion of energy rippling through space. The shockwave staggered the Megan warship, but it didn't retreat. Instead, it retaliated with a barrage of energy beams, each one cutting through the darkness with razor-sharp precision. The Titan rocked violently with each hit. Sparks flew from the console, alarms blared, and the crew scrambled to keep systems online, each jolt sending them tumbling into action. Status report, Holden barked, his voice tight with urgency. Shields holding at 50%, Michael called, his eyes fixed on the flickering readouts. But the starboard engine's down. Power's out on that side. Can we maintain course? Holden asked, barely keeping the concern from his voice. Michael's fingers flew over the controls, rerouting energy where he could. Barely. Flicking switches, but we're still moving. Holden nodded. Then keep us moving. On the Megan ship, Bolter was locked in a deadly game of wills. The humans had absorbed the first hit, but their counterstrike had nearly crippled his flagship shields. He had underestimated them. The Titan wasn't just a warship. It was a force of nature, an unyielding presence in the void. Bolter's jaw tightened. Keep up the pressure, he commanded. Focus on disabling their engines. If we take out their mobility, they won't be able to continue the fight. The crew obeyed, sending another barrage of energy beams, this one aimed directly at the Titan's core. The beams glowed brighter as they closed in on their target, the Titan-S fate hanging by a thread. Holden saw the incoming blast and cursed under his breath. There was no time to dodge, no way to avoid it. This hit would decide everything. Get us out of here, Holden shouted, his fingers a blur as he slammed his hand on the console to reroute power. The Titan lurched again, this time as Michael diverted the remaining energy into the AP shields. The incoming beam hit with full force, shaking the ship to its very core. Sparks shot from every console, and for a brief moment, everything went black. Then, as if to defy the chaos that had just ensued, the Titan systems rebooted. The shields, though barely holding, had absorbed just enough energy to keep the ship from disintegrating. The hum of the engines returned, steady and unyielding. Holden's hand tightened on the console, his eyes flicking over the status screens. He let out a breath. We're still here, he muttered, a grin slowly spreading across his face. And so are you, apparently. Bolter stood on the observation deck, his gaze fixed on the Titan, which remained intact despite everything thrown at it. His mind raced. This wasn't the end. Not yet, but something inside him twisted with the realization that the humans were unlike any foe the Megan had ever faced. He could feel it, a deep, unsettling truth. The Titan wasn't just a warship. It was a message, and maybe, just maybe, he had miscalculated.